the President of the United States is the President of the United States. And at this point, as an American, I don't really care who's responsible. And I think a lot of Americans are feeling that way. They're like, the bickering game is happening. There's polls about, are Democrats more responsible? I don't care anymore. There's kids who are going to starve.
Agree.
The president should get up and say, everyone come over to my house and let's have a...
In today's video, former Trump official Miles Taylor absolutely destroys MAGA pundits Kevin O'Leary and Mike Lawler on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. This heated exchange dives deep into the chaos surrounding the government shutdown, and Miles doesn't hold back. He calls out the hypocrisy, the lack of accountability, and the devastating impact that political games are having on everyday Americans. As Kevin and Mike scramble to defend the GOP's position, Miles drops hard truths about how leadership failures and partisan stubbornness are pushing working families to the brink. So let's dive in and watch how Miles Taylor shuts down Kevin O'Leary and Mike Lawler on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Conversation. I worked with him in the last shutdown, the 35-day shutdown from 2018 to 2019, in the administration to try to get him to end it. And I will tell you very candidly what that was like. Days just got burned where the president didn't care. He wasn't thinking about it. He was thinking about other things. We said, Mr. President, the troops aren't going to get paid. Mr. President, people might not be able to feed their kids. Mr. President, essential government services are going to shut down. And guess what? He did not care, because to him this was a video game. But this is not a video game. Tomorrow night, there are families who are going to go out on American streets, and they're going to trick or treat from the start of trick or treat until the very end. Do you know why? Because that might be the food they can afford to feed their kids for the next few days. That rocks me to hear anecdotes like that. And I'm not blaming you for it, Congressman. I'm just saying I would hope my fellow conservatives call on the president to say, you know what, Mr. President, who cares who's to blame? Bring them all to the House. Let's cut a deal. Let's reopen the government. Let's feed kids.
Even during the historic 35-day shutdown, SNAP was funded. And this is the first time that it hasn't been. The average household receives about $332 per month if they're using SNAP.
I'm not a fan of solving for one problem over another. A bill like Ted Cruz has to keep air traffic controllers going. This is all bad. The people vote their representation, and the government's supposed to do the work of the people. I say none of this stuff should go forward, so the pressure gets worse and worse and worse, whether it's SNAP, which is horrific, whether you can't travel. We're a very transit-based society in America. You can see it today. I flew into New York, delays like crazy, and it's just, these guys stopped getting paid tonight.
Wait, are you saying you don't think that anything should be funded?
No, no separate bills. I think you have to squeeze government on a bipartisan basis like a teenage pimple. Keep squeezing it until they get back to Washington and they solve the problem. Everybody's got an agenda item here. You've got this issue around health care. Other people have issues around SNAP. You've got the traffic controllers, air traffic controllers. Everybody's got an issue. And the reason they have an issue is the government of America is closed. So don't solve one vertical. Don't do anything until everybody is so pissed off. Because I'll tell you, next week, when people, the one that kills you every time is to get to an airport and there's a 5-hour lineup. That's the one that always gets government.
You know what's wild? Every time the government shuts down, it's the same cycle of finger pointing while the people actually living paycheck to paycheck get caught in the crossfire. Miles Taylor brings something to this conversation that's rare in politics: experience. He's not guessing how a shutdown affects families. He's seen it firsthand from the inside. When he talks about leaders ignoring the warnings about missed paychecks and unfunded programs, you can tell he's been there, trying to convince people in power to act before it's too late. That kind of insight doesn't come from theory, it comes from reality. And that's why Kevin O'Leary's whole "let the pressure build" argument just feels off. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from a businessman who sees systems, not people. But government isn't a company, and citizens aren't employees you can motivate by making them miserable. This isn't about quarterly profits, it's about basic survival. You can't starve people into good policy. SNAP benefits are running out. Essential workers are missing pay, and families are struggling to keep food on the table. All because politicians want leverage. The The truth is, no shutdown in modern history has fixed anything meaningful. It doesn't spark reform, it just chips away at faith in leadership. Miles isn't talking about politics. He's talking about decency. Accountability, empathy, and common sense shouldn't be partisan values. But here we are. Sometimes the most radical thing in Washington is simply caring about people more than power.
Back to work. So Cruz is right to bring that bill, but I don't want it passed. I want those people pissed, whether the Republicans or Democrats saying to the representation, hey, bozos, get back to Washington.
Well, and let me just say this. I'm sorry. The people that I represent can't afford a plane ticket. So waiting in line for a delayed plane is not going to get them pissed. What's getting the people that I know who are upset are the people that are literally not being able to eat. To say that you're not holding Medicaid hostage when you know that Democrats are trying to negotiate to get health care back on the table.
That's the Affordable Care Act subsidy,
right,
which is a totally different
right, but
issue.
you know Democrats don't have leverage, so let's stop playing games. This is their only leverage that they have.
They've said this
right.
is the only leverage they have, which is why they shut the government.
That's exactly it.
Where's the deal maker?
So where's the deal maker?
Come in and make a deal.
So
we've never allowed policy, and this is Chuck Schumer saying this. This is Hakeem Jeffries saying this. This is Nancy Pelosi saying this. We've never allowed policy to be extracted at the barrel of a gun by using a shutdown to hold the American people hostage. There's a very simple way to address all these issues. And by the way, I'm a lead co-sponsor on a bill to extend the ACA subsidy by a year. I went and asked Hakeem Jeffries 3 weeks ago, sign on to the bill. If this is what you're saying is the issue, let's get it done, sign on to the bill and join me. He said no, because it really was never about that. So if we want to address health care in America, let's do it. But you don't do it in a shutdown.
There's something really different about this shutdown. All of us who've lived through all these different shutdowns. I live in Washington, D.C., and what I remember from all of those shutdowns, you remember this, Sarah, there's always somebody on Capitol Hill bickering back and forth, whether they're with the Speaker, they're Republican or Democrat. They're going at each other, trying to figure out and trying to cast blame. I take that with a grain of salt as well. But you don't see that right now. There's nobody in Washington, D.C. trying to work on this. The Senate, as you said, was sent home. There's nobody there. Donald Trump just got back from an Asia trip where he was gone for 8 days. People need to be back in Washington right now trying to solve this.
Can I say, because you keep saying over and over, there's never, they've always signed on. Let me be clear. I'm an independent. I'm not a Democrat. I told Democrats that they should have did the same thing that you're doing to them. They should have shut it all down, broke it all down. So I appreciate the or else, that the Republicans are doing if that is the agenda that you're pushing. So I just want to be clear about that. When you say they've always signed on, they should have stopped signing on a long time ago when Sarah was following us with the George Floyd matter. They should have shut it down a long time ago when we were looking to expand the Supreme Court. So I am all for, pushing the agenda and using what you can as leverage, and Republicans do that best. So now be confused why Democrats are.
When people in Washington start treating a government shutdown like some kind of negotiation tactic, it shows just how disconnected they are from the reality most Americans face. Tezlyn Figaro brought the kind of perspective that rarely gets airtime, one that comes from understanding what everyday people are actually going through. Because the truth is, folks at the bottom aren't thinking about delayed flights or long TSA lines. They're thinking about whether they can afford groceries next week. Every single time the government shuts down, it's the working class and low-income families that take the biggest hit. Programs like SNAP, Medicaid, and housing assistance don't just pause, they leave millions of people in limbo. Back during the 2018-2019 shutdown, food banks across the country saw their shelves empty faster than ever, with a 30% spike in demand. Federal workers lined up for free meals just to feed their families. That's not politics, that's survival. And let's not forget the hypocrisy of calling these shutdowns a fiscally responsible move. The 2019 shutdown alone cost the US economy about $11 billion, money that taxpayers never got back. So when politicians like Mike Lawler frame this as leverage, it just sounds hollow. What Tezlyn's really calling for is empathy and accountability, the kind that puts people before party lines. It's not about scoring political points, it's about protecting those who can't afford to be political pawns. That's not left or right, that's just basic humanity.
Republicans in my conference last Congress that wanted to shut the government down over Joe Biden's open border policy. I and others said no. Not because I disagreed with them on the substance of the issue, but because shutting down the government is not going to solve the problem. And in fact, what it's doing, the very people that you're talking about that are not going to get food assistance, that's what it does. It creates this tit-for-tat game where each side uses the American people as a hostage in a ridiculous negotiation. We can easily pass the clean CR, open the government up, pass an ACA subsidy extension. I don't want to see people's health care premiums go up. But the fact is that this subsidy, by the way, the Democrats passed to expire at the end of this year. If they could have done a permanent extension while Joe Biden was president, they would have done that. But
your
couldn't.
argument is,
And
well,
so,
let's just pass it and let's negotiate later. And that reminds me of sometime when men say, don't worry about it, I'll just call you in the morning. You know, so I've heard it all before. I've cheated on you 655 times. But this one time, you know what I'm talking about. But this one time, oh, it's going to be all better. So in the words of Sunshine Anderson as an R&B singer, I've heard it all before. So to say, let's just pass it and don't worry about it, that's not how it works.
well, then you will see this happen every single time. If people want to use a government shutdown, you will see this happen in perpetuity every year, September 30th. One
We're
group
not
is
the
going to hold
longest
it,
yet.
and it's not good.
That's in about
It's
8
not good.
days.
Yeah.
So you got, if you're
We're coming
going
up
for the
on it.
record, you got 8 more days to go. I think the date is November 15th. That's when the pimple pops. November 15th, you heard it here first. That's when everybody, including you, are double pissed, more than you are today. That's when everybody's paycheck stops. That's when transit shuts down. That's when people are starving on SNAP. Everybody's going to be really, really unhappy. And they're going to say the representation, red or blue, hey guys, get back to D.C. and solve this problem.
You can tell when someone's speaking from lived experience versus just reciting political strategy, and Tezlyn Figaro made that crystal clear, while Kevin O'Leary and Mike Lawler kept talking about leverage and negotiating tactics. Tezlyn was focused on something a lot more real, the impact a government shutdown has on actual people. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about politics, it's about survival. When the government shuts down, it's not the wealthy or the well-connected who feel it. It's the everyday workers who lose paychecks, the families who depend on SNAP, and the kids who rely on school lunches just to eat. Over 40 million Americans depend on those benefits, and even a short delay can mean going hungry. Treating that as some kind of political pressure move isn't just tone deaf. It's cruel. And let's be honest, hearing Republicans talk about healthcare costs and ACA subsidies feels hollow when many of them have spent years trying to dismantle those very programs. If they cared about affordable healthcare, they'd protect it, not weaponize it during a shutdown. Kevin's idea that we should wait until people get angry enough to push Congress into action completely misses the point. People are angry because they're tired, broke, and unheard. Tezlyn speaks from that frustration and from that truth. She's not just debating policy, she's standing up for people who don't have a platform to fight back. Tezlyn wasn't performing, she was being real. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.